All right, here we go with Grayson Grundhafer. Grayson, I want to get to the weekend because it's a massive weekend for Baylor because it's been forever to have something like this coming up. But we just got off the phone with Caden Siraki. He is, man, this kind of seemed like an Eric Mateos, Craig or Paul both mentioned it could be like a Troy Baker type personality. He seems to be, and I know it's a long way to go. He's got a year left, but he sure does seem to be a pretty fun kid.
Yeah, great personality, and I think that's going to fit really well with this Baylor coaching staff. Obviously, Eric Mateos, he's just a guy who builds great relationships, and because of that, he's a guy who I think could really, really just continue to have a great impact on the recruiting trail. And as you've already seen, I mean, Baylor up to 4 commits on the offensive line already, and Caden Siraki is the most recent one.
And Grayson, his brother's a pretty good player too, but he's a couple years younger, so he's got a ways to go. But pretty cool that they're already picking up some of the same offers, and also I imagine it won't hurt Baylor's chances in the future to have their brother or to have his brother on the roster. But I guess kind of a dynamic duo they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Colton is a guy who I actually think could end up being a national type recruit. You know, a top 250 type guy. Just watching him at camp on the 5th, because that's obviously where both of them got the offer right after that camp. He looks like a guy who's just going to continue to grow and get better and better. I was actually really shocked he was in the 2024 class, so still a long way to go in his recruitment. But, yeah, I mean, this definitely helps Baylor chances with him in the future. But at the moment, it's really hard to bank on that, and truthfully, Baylor has not had a lot of success with taking package deals like that. So I think this is more just about Caden being a guy that really fits the program. And also, I mean, 6'7", 320 pounds and can move. That's a pretty nice pickup for this class.
Grayson, who is coming this weekend and who do they want to get locked down for sure before they leave?
Yeah, this is a loaded weekend, so it's really difficult to narrow it down to, one or two. Obviously, there's a lot of really good prospects on campus, but I think, I was writing a story for the website today, and the first kind of area that I started with was a guy that we've talked about a ton, and that's Lexington safety Jared Kerr. He plays kind of all over the place at Lexington, runs the ball, threw the ball a little bit last year for them, catches the ball as a receiver, and plays defense as well. But he's been a guy whose recruitment has been a very interesting one. He got the Baylor offer, that they were his first offer 6 months before the big offers came in. So he built a great relationship with the staff. Then, of course, the offers from Texas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Penn State all kind of started to line up, and things started to seem like it wavered a little bit. Well, last weekend he went and visited A&M, had a great trip by all accounts. A lot of people were kind of thinking that he was going to go ahead and make a decision, but he decided that the Baylor trip was definitely one that he wanted to take. And I think this is a huge one. I think this is A&M versus Baylor right now. And Jared Kerr is a guy who I believe is a top 20, top 25 type player in the entire state, and a guy who's locked in as a 4-star prospect. So this is a huge trip for him and probably going to be the deciding factor in his recruitment.
Grayson Grundhafer with us on SicEm365 Radio.
Grayson, so they got 4 offensive linemen in this class now. How many more do you see them potentially taking?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I think we're going to continue to monitor as things go forward. They have 2 visitors on campus this weekend who are offensive linemen, which is Austin Kowecki out of Frisco Lebanon Trail, and then George Mail out of Bingham High School in Utah. So clearly they're looking to add some more pieces to the puzzle. We've talked about it quite a bit. I think they're going to take 6 offensive linemen in this class. And truthfully, if they decided, we're going to take a best available and end up taking 7, that really wouldn't shock me either. It's an area they have to address. They need to take as many shots as possible to try to make sure they hit on, a couple of these guys in this class going forward. So, yeah, I think it's 6. That's a pretty safe bet. And then I do believe if they wanted to, they could add a 7.
And there are those who have committed, Reese, Pyron, Roberts Day. It seemed like it's been forever since Kyan Roberts Day committed. I know a lot of other people have offered him since then. How important is it just for them to to have a chance to have that face-to-face and really, truly get to know each other on campus?
Yeah, so starting with Kyan Roberts Day, just because you mentioned him, I think people forget that he's been committed since May of 2020. So he's been locked into this class for a long time. He was committed 7 months before the second commit in this class, which was Carmelo Jones. So he's been locked in for a while, but he's also been, I feel like, the most talked about commit as well, because Alabama offer, Tennessee offer, Oklahoma State offer. He's gone on a few visits. So in his case, I think this is a huge weekend. Baylor has to solidify things with Kyan Roberts Day. He hasn't been able to be on campus at all. And so because of that, this weekend is huge for him. Now, as far as the other commits go, I think you look around and you just see a great group of visitors that are coming, guys who are ready to be on campus, ready to meet the staff in person if they haven't, ready to just kind of meet the players in the class as well. They have the group text and stuff, but that's very different than actually getting to be around the guys who are in the class with you. So I think it's a huge one. I think the fact that Zach Pyron is coming on this visit makes things very intriguing as well, because obviously your quarterback's usually the leader of the class. And so he's on this visit. Richard Reese, who you mentioned, the Belleville running back. There's also a few more other commits, the tight ends, Kelsey Johnson, Cody Mladinka, and then on the offensive line, Timothy Don and Colton Price. So a really good weekend for the commits and a good opportunity for them to try to do a little recruiting and try to help out the staff this weekend with some of these key prospects that are in town. I mean, this is a loaded weekend. There are some guys that Baylor absolutely has a great chance with, and they're guys that a lot of schools in the country want to land.
Grayson, how much, and I kind of picked this up last weekend while I was here filming stuff with you guys, how much of the kind of mad scramble going on right now across college football is to kind of figure out, the jumbled roster of COVID and everything else and not getting to see kids for, and it'd be a couple classes at a time because you want juniors in as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely made things more difficult. I mean, when you're talking about trying to fill out a recruiting class and you really are trying to figure out how many spots you have, these kind of new rules to get the numbers back down to 85. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. And right now, I do think it's a bit of a mad scramble for every coaching staff in the country to try to figure out, what guys do they want to land? How many are they going to take in this class? They're also, frankly, they haven't even met a lot of these kids. So that's the other part, meeting them in person and actually figuring out if they're a good cultural fit. That's big as well. And I know phone calls and things like that, you get a good idea. But meeting guys in person is definitely a big deal. So I do think there's a lot of scrambling. There's a lot of attempts to try to get guys on campus. I think that it's going to continue to be like that throughout the season as guys open up their commitment or guys kind of become risers in the class as well. I think you'll probably see some more official visits later on in the season from multiple schools, probably including Baylor.
Is there a certain position group that you have an eye on because of who will be in town this weekend, or is it a little more broad than that?
Yeah, so I would say that, if I'm looking at it and just kind of my perspective, I think the defensive side of the ball in general is really where I'm looking. The wide receiver position's intriguing as well, but if I look at the defense and I see three names, Trey Emery, Jeremy Patton, Jared Kerr, all at the three levels of the defense. When you're talking about a defensive lineman, a linebacker, and a safety, all three have been major priorities in this class since the moment they were offered, and all three have had a certain recruiting, burst over the past few months where they've added more offers or become, more wanted prospects. And so I'm very interested in all three of those guys, how their visits go. Jeremy Patton, he, of course, added Oklahoma, LSU, and Texas. Took a Texas official visit last weekend. So a lot of momentum for him there. Trey Emery's been their top guy on the defensive line, it seems like, for the longest time. So obviously you want to build in the trenches. Trey Emery is your guy for that. And then Jared Kerr is the guy that I mentioned at the very beginning. But from a cultural perspective and just who he is as a player and kind of what he is about, I don't know that there's a better fit in this 2022 class than Jared Kerr could be for Baylor.
Kerr burst on the scene at Lexington as a running back. Patton burst on the scene at Tenaha because he was a tough to deal with wide receiver. And that happens. High school players who play running back become linebackers or safeties or whatever. And it also means they're very athletic as well. Is that also something that you've noticed, Grayson?
Oh, absolutely. And it's different than just being, a good athlete. It's also being versatile. So you mentioned Jeremy Patton. This is a guy who kind of plays, at Tenaha, it's a smaller school. So, he's asked to do a lot of things. He's asked to be running back. He's asked to be receiver. He's asked to play safety. He's asked to play really close to the line of scrimmage and go make physical plays in the run game. So he's very versatile, and you can see that on his film. And then he goes out and tests really, really well as well. And you put all that together and you say, man, that's a really good football player and a guy who can really make that leap to the next level. And I think when you're at a school like Tenaha, there's still, I would say, unlike a school like Allen, there's a lot more growth potential, in my opinion, for a player that probably hasn't had the same benefits in the weight room and same things like that. And so I think he's a guy who's going to continue to grow. He could be a perfect fit for Dave Aranda's defense at the linebacker position. And I wrote about this in my piece this morning. But I think Jeremy Patton is one of those guys who you could see playing on Sundays after, 3 or 4 years in Dave Aranda's system. We've seen him put a lot of really good players in the NFL. And I think Patton could be another one of those linebackers that Dave Aranda finds a way to mold into an NFL player.
They played Mart in a playoff game, and I know that he's probably because he's fast, but he doesn't have that incredible track speed, and that might be why he's on the defensive side, because his body, as you mentioned, he's such a big body. And that I was told that he was good, but that most likely the best fit for him would be on defense. So having the thought that he might end up being a linebacker makes a lot of sense. Anything else, Paul, Craig?
Yeah, Grayson, have you noticed anything noticeably, have you noticed anything substantially different from previous normal camps as far as just, the whole camp structure? Is it pretty much the way that it was pre-COVID, or are there some noticeable differences in kind of how this all operates, guys traveling, all that?
No, you know what? The camps have been pretty just really normal, I would say. They're different because of the coaching staff, I would say, more so than COVID. So I think you're seeing I wouldn't say a different level of energy, but I would say the energy is dispersed, to different, position coaches. So you're seeing Eric Mateos being one of, the most loud and really just being a great coach and really relating to the players out on the field. And you're seeing the same splits. You're seeing the offensive line and defensive line go separate, and then they'll run, one-on-ones against each other, very similar to what's going on with the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, the defensive backs. So it's very similar in the structure, but I would say, I think with COVID, you're not having the, I would say there was a camp that Rule had probably, I guess it was 2 years ago, where it felt like there were like 700 kids at the camp. Now, you're not seeing that. You're seeing that I think the highest they've had is 300, which was last week, and they'll probably have another 300 this weekend. But I'll never forget that camp with Matt Rule, where it literally felt like there were like 800 people there. And you're just in the Allison Indoor listening to his speech, and it just feels like the whole turf is crowded with people. Everybody's just standing next to each other along the wall trying to listen to Matt Rule talk. It's not like that this year, which I'm very thankful for, because that was absolutely crazy dealing with that. So it's been pretty normal. It's been very fun to kind of watch the coaches. That's been a big change, I would say, and just trying to figure out who these guys are as people.
I did send you a note. I got a note from an Elysian Fields High School coach about Braden Manning, who's a young, talented. It's not. He's like a sophomore this year, but he's a big, strong, good-looking, fast wide receiver from Elysian Fields. Have you been able to do any work or had a chance, or is that just too far down the line?
A little bit further down the line, but I will say, once you see a kid like that get on campus and get to see a little bit more of him, I think that's where you'll get to see kind of who he could be as a player, and also kind of Baylor's interest level as well. So I haven't gotten to do too much research on him. I've been so busy with this 2022 class. But you know how it is. I'll definitely work my way back to it, because 2023 is going to be right around the corner, and then soon enough, 2024 is going to be at the forefront of recruiting season.
Good luck with you this weekend, Grayson Grundhoefer and Brian Etheridge, and what they do on the weekends. Paul was a part of it. Jack's been a part of it as well. It's crazy in and out how they keep up with it. When we come back,